Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to our debate of the G5 Club. And we have the debate, Aid for Trade is. We have the debate, Aid for Trade is the best way to increase aid effectiveness. And G5 Club member teams are Chang, Dan, and myself, Hamdullah, and we have Salim and Sam. And at the first part, in order to give you an introduction and brief history of Aid for Trade, I'll ask Sam to give you some introduction on this one.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. What is Aid for Trade? Aid for Trade, this is an assistance by developed countries to developing countries to ensure that they increase their exports in goods and services, to ensure that the developing countries integrate into the multilateral trading system, and to ensure that the developing countries benefit from the liberalized trade and the increased market access. Aid for Trade has just been launched. It's a new initiative which was launched in 2005 at the Hong Kong WTO Ministerial meeting. Secondly, I would like you to focus on the logic which we have established to back up the Aid for Trade. As you well know, and we have read in previous classes, we know that for a country to grow, we have to ensure that there is foreign direct investment, and the country should be able to export its goods and services. But African countries are facing a lot of constraints in different areas like trade negotiations, infrastructure constraints. They have got low competitiveness of their exports and lack of regional trade facilitation. To ensure that these constraints are taken away, that's why the developed countries introduced Aid for Trade to ensure that they focus their aid on these areas. Aid for Trade is categorized into 5 areas: trade policy, trade development, trade-related infrastructure, and building capacity. And all these are ensured to ensure that these countries are able to trade. Aid for Trade is there to ensure that it reduces the costs which developing countries face when they are trading with other countries. It ensures that the developing countries have got access to the markets, and it also ensures that the developing countries are able to produce what they are going to sell. In the end, you'll see that the objective to achieve is that developing countries' exports should be competitive at the world market. In the end, that they should be able to attract foreign direct investment. In the long run, this will lead to GDP growth, as we have seen in the case of Colombia, Cambodia, and China. Next, I would like to change to look at how Aid for Trade reduces trade costs.
Great. Thank you, Sam. So now what I'm going to talk about is some research evidence that is supporting our argument. So this is a research conducted by Dr. Mann from Brandeis University and her colleagues. For example, time and distance. One extra day in ground transportation will decrease developing countries' export by 1%. Logistic costs accounts for 30% of the total shipment costs, and inventory finance raises production costs by 20%. These are all very significant, not evidence. So these are from the same research. These are basically some linear regressions, and if you are not familiar with geometrics, it's okay, I'm going to explain it to you. So for every number in the red boxes are basically betas or sensitivities. So for example, TARP rates. If we can reduce TARP rates of developed countries by, say, 10%, developing countries can increase their export by more than 15%. Next, port efficiency. If they can increase their port efficiency by 10%, in return they can have almost 10% increase in export. And e-commerce infrastructure, which is even more significant. A 10% increase in e-commerce infrastructure will increase their export by almost 20%. So if we can target our international assistance to those specific areas of aid for trade, we can definitely increase our effectiveness of international aid and help those developing countries enjoy a more sustainable growth in the future. So I'm going to turn this to Celine to further illustrate the effectiveness of aid for trade.
Thank you, John. I'm going to talk about effective market access using aid for trade policy, and this includes reducing administrative barriers to trade, which includes the cutting red tape on customs. It means that in order to using the high rate of tariffs, in order to make profit from that, it is better to reduce the tariff and improve your export and import relations with partner countries, and effectively participate in international trade system and receive profit from international market. And the bureaucracy means that instead of signing 10 or 15 documents for all customs procedures, it is better to sign a maximum maybe 2 to 3 documents in order to accelerate the process of customs clearance. And since we know that time is money, and this makes more benefit than using tariffs. And the next thing is reducing the technical barriers to trade, which means that all the countries which participate in international relations, they have to make some agreement on using global standards for all products, all products in international markets. So if they improve their export and import relations, they will have opportunity to use the product diversification, and they also can use their trade turnover, which means that they can improve also the economy. They can improve the economy, and these two things are very important for proving that aid for trade is one of the effective ways of aid effectiveness. So now I'm going to talk about the example from the OECD report. This report shows us that aid for trade is targeted to the main economic sectors like transport, communication, energy, etc. This shows that aid for trade actually started it was not called in 2000 when the Doha round was when the Doha WTO round raised the question about the aid for trade. They started to actually provide with aid for trade the developed countries and all international relations and financial institutions. They started to provide with aid for trade all developing countries, and you see that from 2002 to 2005 there is increase in sectors: transport, energy, agriculture, industry, and there's slowly a little bit increase in other sectors of economy. And why the aid for trade was important to use? Because according to the OECD report, the aid for trade, the Doha round was mainly benefit for developed countries, and now that was the question. In order to support all developing countries to better participate in international relations, they started to use this policy, and you can see that this sector started to improve more than before 2005. And from 2005 to 2009, there is significant improvement, increase in all sectors of economy, but there is still some sectors like fishing industry and tourism. They require the attention to that. They also should be improved in the future. So it's not necessary to stop talking about using aid in order to improve all sectors of economy. Now I'm going to pass my word to Hamdullah. He will talk about the comparative study of some countries using aid for trade.
Thank you, Salim. Okay, now that we know the idea of aid for trade and the economic tools involved with aid for trade, we wanted to do a fair comparative study of some countries, and we picked up 4 countries from 2 regions of Africa and Asia. And the countries that we selected, we tried to find these countries that have the same economic challenges and are located in the same regions whereas the volume of aid for trade was different for these countries. And as you see, from $7,918 million for the year 2008 and 2009, which was disbursed to these countries, 61% goes to Vietnam and 21% to Nigeria, whereas for Cambodia and Mozambique, it's only less than 10%. And now we wanted to compare the trade-related infrastructure and overall economy of these 4 countries that we'll do in the next step. So in the trade-related infrastructure of the countries, we wanted to compare the linear shipping connectivity index, the air transportation of the countries, and the internet users per 100% of these countries. As you see in the graphs, we see a significant growth for the countries that received a huge amount of aid for trade, and the countries which did not receive the more volume of aid for trade, we don't see the growth in those countries. And the next one, we compared the overall impact of it on the overall economy of these 4 countries. And as you see, again, for the countries who received a huge amount of aid for trade, comparing to those who didn't, we can see that the GDP per capita, we see a significant growth there, as well as a significant growth in foreign direct investment into these countries, and the values of merchandise export and import for the countries. So looking into all this evidence, we can say that aid for trade had its effect on the countries who had a huge volume of aid for trade. And now, in order to compare aid for trade with other aids, I'll give the word to Dan to talk about that.
Thank you, Hongola. Now, we have seen that aid for trade is effective. Now, I want to prove that it is the best way to increase effectiveness. We know there are other ways of aid. There are direct aid, which are aid for education, for food, for health, or for water supply. There are also debt relief. But unfortunately, when we looked into the 2005 UN Summit briefing, we found that after the 2000, they launched this aid. The poverty is still stagnated and worsened in most part of the Africa countries, and the goals of the health and good educations all will be met in 2015. And if you guys remember the case 2 we have started in our GE class, you can find that the debt relief is also ineffective. We see that the 22 countries who received the debt relief only experienced a same growth rate with the 16 countries who didn't receive the debt relief. So that is also not a very good way. So why is it so? The experts and the researchers have found that because these developing countries haven't got a very good economic ground, so this all aid, direct aid or debt relief are only designed for short run, and they are just a waste of money. So aid for trade is the only way to help them to build a good economic environment and then increase the total GDP and finally solve the poverty problem. So it is the aid for trade is the foundation and prerequisite for all the other types of the aid. So from now on, we have proved our standout point into 4 dimensions. The first of all, we see that there's a very strong logic for our aid for trade. The second one is that we have solid economic tools. We have learned in our GE class from historical statistics to prove our idea. The second thing is that we have done a lot of empirical work to stand our point. The fourth one is that I have proved that aid for trade is the best thing by comparing it with other aids. So in overall, we strongly believe that aid for trade is the best way to increase our aid effectiveness. Now, I want to end our presentation using a very old Chinese proverb, which is, if you give a man a fish, you can only feed him for a day, but if you teach a man how to fish, you can feed them for a lifetime. So we believe that the aid for trade is our way to teach the developing countries how to fish, and we strongly believe that using this way, we can finally solve the world poverty problem. Thank you very much.